Hello, and welcome to this week's Bible study. My dogs are panting very loudly. I don't know if you can hear it, but it's very distracting to me. But I'm gonna try to power through best I can. It's very warm today. I will say that much. So I like to start all Bible studies with a breathing exercise. Something to get us calm and focused on the future teaching. So if you wouldn't mind doing a quick, well, not quick, but 3 deep breaths with me. So we start in. Thank you. Now, I also like to, after the breathing, do a worship song, just like a quiet meditative worship song to kind of help further the meditative learning mood. But I can't play those videos here because of copyright reasons. So if you, for those watching on YouTube, if you want to just go into the description, there's going to be a link for a quiet worship song. If you want to just click that, listen to it, maybe keep doing your deep breathing, or like quietly sing the song to yourself if you know the lyrics, or like just sway to it, whatever gets you into that like meditative kind of headspace. Do that, and then when you're done with that song, come back and watch the rest of this video. So if you want to do that, you can do that right now. And you're back. Welcome back. I hope you like the song. Yes, so we're going to do a Bible study today. That's the next thing on the agenda. So today we're going to be talking about Genesis chapter 14. It's another relatively straightforward chapter. There's only one part that dips like a little bit into supernatural conspiracy theory territory, but there's nothing too conclusive about it, or at least, the evidence is very complicated. So it's gonna be one of those things you gotta decide for yourself a bit. You'll see what I mean when we start to get into it, which we're gonna do right now. So chapter 14 of the New Revised Standard Version of Genesis starts: in the days of King Amraphel of Shinar, King Arioch of Elasar, King Chedorlaomer of Elam, and King Tidal of Goyim, these kings made war with King Bera of Sodom, King Bersha of Gomorrah, King Shinab of Admah, King Shemember. I read these beforehand, but then I take a nap and then I get groggy, so I'll get a little slow. Anyways, Shemeber of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is Zor. All these forces in the valley of Siddim, that is the Dead Sea. 12 years they had served Chedorlaomer, but in the 13th year they rebelled. I'm very sorry to have to do this, but I just have to say that I find it so funny that the king of Sodom's name is Bera. Because especially if you Google the meaning of that name, it says it's a German name that means bear. Now, obviously, that's not what this specific name means. Germany, much less even its most ancient version of its language, didn't exist at this time. The actual meaning for this context is actually, it means gift. But, the name itself looks like a bad anagram for bear, and that is just perfect for the king of Sodom, in my opinion. Anyways, back to biblical matters. it's just to simplify what I just read. The king of Elam, Chedorlaomer, was in charge of this 9-kingdom allyship, and that lasted about 12 years. But then 5 of the 9 kingdoms rebelled, and that included those meddlesome kids, Sodom and Gomorrah. Basically, it's the cycle of politics, really. It's good for a bit, and then someone gets greedy and it falls apart, and then it just starts getting good again until someone messes it up again. It's never ending, really, and absolutely exhausting, which is why I personally can't wait for the new Eden to come, so we can just finally chill forever. But I digress. The chapter continues. The 14th year of Chedorlaomer and the kings who were with him came and subdued the Rephaim in Ashtaroth Karnaim, and the Zuzim in Ham, the Emim in Sheva Kiriathaim, and the Horites in the hill country of Seir, as far as El Paran, on the edges of the wilderness. Then they turned back and came to En Mishpat, that is Kadesh, and subdued all the country of the Amalekites and also the Amorites who lived in Hazazon Tamar. And a mouthful of names. Now, I'm not totally sure why Chedorlaomer went after these people who seemingly were not part of the rebellion. Either they were allies to the rebels, or this happened before they rebelled. Like I've said before, Hebrew writers have a tendency to choose literary devices over chronology. So maybe this allyship got together to destroy these people, and when it was coming to an end, or, conquer them, and then when it was coming to an end, Sodom and the others, backstabbed them. I'm not totally sure. I couldn't find any info on it, actually. Even the Wikipedia wasn't super clear, but they seem to imply that they attacked those tribes and then rebelled. But yeah, I'm not totally sure. Maybe somebody with more historical knowledge of this event could elaborate. But another interesting thing about this is we get the first reference to the Rephaim, which is another name for Nephilim. I did not say that with the correct emphasis. I'm gonna do that again. I'm gonna take 2. Another interesting thing about this is you get the first reference to the Rephaim, which is another name for the Nephilim. See, that sounded way better. So Rephaim literally means terrible ones, and could refer to either a spiritual deadness or mighty beastmen. We kind of covered that when we were talking about Nephilim. Whatever you remember about the Nephilim, it applies to the Rephaim as well. So I don't know. That's cool that those kings were able to subdue them. I'm sure that wasn't easy. Maybe it was why they had to do a whole 9 kingdom allyship just to get after those. Just an interesting note. Anyways, next verse. Then the king of Sodom, the king of Gomorrah, the king of Admah, the king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is Zor, went out, and they joined in the battle of in the valley of Siddim with King Chedorlaomer of Elam, King Tidal of Goyim, King Amraphel of Shinar, and King Arioch of Elasar. 4 kings against 5. Now, the valley of Siddim was full of bitumen pits, also known as tar pits, and as the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, some fell into the tar pits, and the rest fled to the hill country. So the enemy took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their provisions and went their way. They also took Lot, the son of Abram's brother, who lived in Sodom, and his goods, and departed. So Lot gets caught in the crossfire on the losing side, and being a wealthy man in the area, that probably put a target on his back, just so we're on the same page of what just happened. So next verse, Then the one who had escaped came and told Abram the Hebrew, who was living by the oaks of Mamre, the Amorite, brother of the Eshcol and of Ener. These were allies of Abram. So this, by the way, is the first time the word Hebrew is used, so that's cool. Some people think it comes from the, I think, Aramaic word, Aramaic root word to, which means to pass, and can be translated as passenger. This is likely a reference to the fact that Abram came from beyond the Euphrates River in order to get to Canaan. In fact, if you Google the etymology of Hebrew, you'll literally get from the other side of the river. I personally like how simple it is, yet it still conveys the idea that the Jewish people were different from the rest. They were set apart in some way. They came from somewhere else entirely. You know, they're coming from a different place. Right from the start. They're from a different side, and I think you could get a lot of metaphors out of that one. I think you get the idea. I think you get what I'm laying down. I just thought that was interesting. So let's move on to the next verse. So when Abram heard that his nephew had been taken captive, he led forth his trained men, born in his house, 318 of them, and went in pursuit as far as Dan. This is at the border of northern Israel, by the way. Excuse me. He divided his forces against them by night, he and his servants, and routed them and pursued them to Hobah, north of Damascus. Then he brought back all the goods, and also brought back his nephew Lot with his goods, and the woman, and the people. So I think it's just hilarious how this translation implies that women are separate from the rest of people. Like, there's women, and then there's people, and they are different things. You get a feel for Abram's tactical military mind when he splits his troops to attack from all sides, at night, no less. So it's a very solid, classic strategy. It's also interesting that Abram already had a trained military staff on hand to go rescue Lot. This was likely because Abram was pretty rich, and rich people have an extensive security detail. You might think, after hearing what Enduring Word had to say about Egypt, that they'd think having somebody to protect your investment was sinful and they should trust God to protect it. But they don't really say it so much as imply it vaguely, so it's hard to say if that's what they really think. It probably depends on the situation, though, if you're asking me personally. I think in some cases, it's just money or material goods, and if God wants you to have it, he'll make sure it doesn't get stolen. I think that's well within God's powers. But, God also has to contend with the free will of earth, and that tends to be not good. But in that case, it's sometimes better to defend things yourself. The age-old debate of being faithful versus being smart. And I think it really just depends on how important these material goods are to you, if it's really important, maybe it's just safer to add that extra layer of security. Though I do think it says a lot about your trust in God, which way you go. A quick side note before we continue, though. Enduring Word says Lot ignored God's warning to not return to Sodom, but they didn't give textual evidence for that. Maybe they will in later chapters. They've done that kind of stuff before, but I still think they are on a mission to slander Lot any chance they get. Very unfair, but, I digress. Anyways, next verse. After his return from the defeat of Chedorlaomer and the kings who were with him, the king of Sodom went out to meet him at the valley of Shaveh, that is the king's valley, and King Melchizedek of Salem brought up bread and wine. He was the priest of God Most High. He blessed him and said, "Blessed be Abram by God Most High, maker of heaven and earth, and blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand." And Abram gave him 1/10 of everything. So Melchizedek, which means king of justice, he's a bit of a mysterious figure in the Bible. All we really know is he came from Salem, which would later become Jerusalem, the holiest of cities. This is the place where Jesus gets crucified and buried somewhere around here. And Melchizedek is depicted as this holy king priest, which is a rare thing to have in the Bible. As a good thing. Usually the position is corruptible and discouraged, except when talking about the Messiah, who is also a type of king priest. And keep in mind, Melchizedek isn't Israeli, he's a Canaanite, so not even considered God's chosen people. Yet he's still held in such a high regard. Abram gave him 1/10 of everything. So clearly Abram's like, this guy, we're tracking on the same level. I have to, Abram's giving him that kind of respect. So that's got to tell you something. There's also the obvious bread and wine symbology and the first tithing given by Abram, which got restarted and enforced by Levitical priests. He also blesses both God and Abram, who is a man, which shows how priests act as intermediaries that connect the two, same as Jesus, who will do the same thing in a more efficient way. So you definitely catch messianic vibes from this Gentile guy who supposedly looks after the holy city before it was even officially a holy city. There's also no genealogy or history on this guy, or how or why he came to the Lord, what his deal was. This is basically his only appearance in the Bible beyond passing references to him as a great king priest and associating him with Jesus and the divine council, saying Jesus is like him but better. The debate comes in as to whether Melchizedek is like Jesus because he is Jesus, or because he's the closest human approximation to Jesus. And Jewish writers are saying Jesus will be even better than Melchizedek, a step up from Melchizedek. Or maybe it's somewhere in the middle and he was some kind of angel. Most scholars don't think that he was actually Jesus. I don't think that's what I gathered. I think it's relatively clear that the New Testament writers only compare Jesus and Melchizedek as similar, but not the same, with one being obviously greater than the other. But a case can be made as to whether or not he was an angel of some kind or just a man. That's where the real debate is. It kind of depends if his genealogy was unknown or non-existent. Hebrews 7:3, they will describe Melchizedek as without father or mother, without genealogy, without beginning of days or end of life, resembling the Son of God. He remains a priest forever. This implies that Melchizedek is some kind of immortal being. But this could also be a literary hyperbole. Maybe just one oh yeah, he's living forever in the kingdom of heaven kind of a thing. Just trying to get people to understand what Jesus was kind of trying to do by making relatable comparisons. However, Jesus does have a genealogy, so this would make more sense as evidence for him being an angel. If Melchizedek's genealogy was just unknown, and I think this is where most scholars lean, he'd just be a guy who became a priest of God because he wanted to, not because he was a Levite that had to. But if it's non-existent, now we have a case for making him some kind of divine being. Probably not Jesus himself, since, other Besides what I've already mentioned, he's other possible appearances of Jesus in the Old Testament don't give him a personal name. He's usually just called Angel of the Lord. If we are to assume that that is in fact Jesus, and many do, by the way, but Melchizedek could be some kind of agent of God, angel, not angel of God, not angel of the Lord like Jesus is, but just an angel of God. Either way, his presence foreshadows the Messiah and gives an idea of who to come. Like, it's like how people would say, it's like King David, but it's not King David, it's better than King David. It's like one of those kind of things. Naked Bible Podcast, my all-time favorite reference to make in this series, actually did 5 whole episodes solely dedicated to explaining who Melchizedek is. And just to illustrate how complicated this is, I skimmed the transcripts, which I will be linking in the sources after the video goes up, so for your benefit. And they talk about whether Melchizedek was a personal name or a title, really trying to figure out what his name actually means, if he really honors our God or some pagan god known as Sedek, if he really was a king himself or he served some other unnamed king, if he was a human or a divine being. And that's just like the first 2 episodes that talk about like the Old Testament references to Melchizedek. The next 2 parts go into more detail on the New Testament references, which go into more detail about whether or not Melchizedek was just a human or a divine being, and his relationship and connection to Jesus. Sorry, I spaced out for a second. When you're just like reading words and then you're not cognitively recognizing what you're reading. I'm going to try that again. Take 2. So the next 2 parts go into more detail on the New Testament references, debating whether or not Melchizedek was just a human or a divine being, and his relationship and connection to Jesus. And then the last episode is just a Q&A dedicated solely to Melchizedek related questions from the listeners. Naked Bible Podcast doesn't really land anywhere with any like real conviction. I don't think. They're mostly just laying out the facts of the case and letting you kind of decide which it is. They do say that the Old Testament sees Melchizedek as just some guy. He's just a normal human, while the New Testament implies more, like there's some more divinity behind him. Naked Bible themselves seem to lean towards Melchizedek, the historical person, as not being divine himself, but explain how Hebrew writers make that connection, and they either use it as a metaphor or they just confuse the names of Melchizedek and the archangel Michael, who's also known as Metatron, fun fact, thinking that they're the same person, because Michael has a lot that Metatron isn't even the only other name he has a lot of different names, so they're thinking like, oh, that's the same person. I'm not totally sure though. I'm gonna be honest about that. I didn't really have the time or energy to carefully go through a 4-hour long episodes plus a Q&A, like essentially 5+ hours of content. But that was the impression I was getting from the stuff that like just caught my eye. But if you want more accurate and in-depth details, I'm going to be linking all 5 of those episodes, which have both audio and transcript options available for your convenience. And that's where I'm leaving that. So, last verse. Then the king of Sodom said to Abram, "Give me the persons, but take the goods for yourself." But Abram said to the king of Sodom, "I have sworn to the Lord, God Most High, maker of heaven and earth, that I would not take a thread or a sandal thong or anything that is yours, so that you might not say, I have made Abram rich. I will take nothing but what the young men have eaten, and the share of the men who went with me, Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre. Let them take their share." And so ends chapter 14. So last thing to close this out with, when I first read this, I assumed Abram was snubbing Sodom specifically to be snarky, like, your money is no good here type of thing, since, Sodom bad. And also low-key started a rebellion for seemingly just a power grab, which is what got Lot and Abram into this mess in the first place. But enduring where it clarifies, they think it was more that he didn't want anyone to make him rich besides God. It's harder to give God credit for your blessings when someone else clearly was the one rewarding you for your hard work and dedication, looking like you use typical worldly methods to get to the top. Abram thinks it's better to follow God solely, and if financial success is granted to you miraculously, God's hand in that is a lot more obvious to those around you, which is a good way to attract more followers. And I'm not personally saying that this is what everyone should do. I think it's one of those things that God convicts you to do it. If that's something you're feeling led to do, you should do it. But I wouldn't say that this is blanket advice, blanket financial advice. I don't think God really has a problem with you trying to be financially successful, but as long as that's not the be all end all, then you should be good. Although I will say I didn't see Abram with that same energy after the Egyptians gave him all that stuff after he deceived them. It's hard to say you were a self-starter when somebody else obviously started you off, but go off, I guess. I'd also like to end this on the important note that Abram didn't force his allies, Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre, to his personal religious standards. He let them accept whatever reward Sodom gave them without judgment, and that's all I have to say about that. So, thank you for joining me for this week's study. I'm going to be closing the video out in prayer for our friends, and those requests are currently, so my mother did get a job, so we're going to thank God for that. She's still trying to figure out the church. She kind of thinks she found a church, but she's still kind of deciding, so we're just going to pray for some guidance on that. One of my friends still needs a diagnosis for her heart condition. And I don't know, my dad seems like he's doing okay, but I don't know, maybe we could just pray for progress on that. And then for myself, I haven't been doing too bad this week. Like I said, I've been getting out of that depressive state. I think I have been noticing some anxiety though, and it's making me easily frustrated, which makes me nervous. So I guess I'll just pray for God to chill me out. But if you have any prayer requests that you would like to add to that, if I mentioned you and you want to update us on that, also do that. I had a lovely friend watch this video, and he made comments and then left, and I kind of want to read them. So what I'm gonna do is play a song and read those comments and maybe respond to them. And while I do that, I'm gonna play a song. Okay, so gonna out the prayer. read the comments while I was trying to be smooth. I didn't do a very good job. I killed the mic accidentally while I was trying to read those comments, so that was fun. So Josh was commenting, my dear friend Josh was commenting that he had heard that people thought that Jesus was Melchizedek in the Old Testament. And like I said, there's not very good evidence for that. I think it'd be easier to make a case that Melchizedek might have been an angel, but there's also pretty good evidence that he was just some dude, and they use Melchizedek as like a metaphor in the New Testament, and it just like confused people. And that's basically it. But yeah, so we're gonna close out in prayer. I'm gonna put this mic back on. I'm so smooth at this. So I'm just gonna close this out in a prayer real quick. So God, thank you for bringing us everyone here today. Shout out to Josh for watching bits of this video. I hope he's doing well. I know he's going through things, so I just pray that he's okay in the end, I guess. I'd also like to pray for my mother. Thank you for helping her find a job and keeping her from going crazy doing that. But she's still trying to settle into like a good church home, so I just pray you give her some guidance on that. Help her settle in a little better. And I also pray for my dad. Thank you for getting him to where he is now. I just pray for continued progress on that. And I'd also like to pray for my dear friend, who I'm still not sure if I can say her name or not. So she just, who she is. She needs a diagnosis and, just mental help, not help, more like support. She just needs support. She's a very tough lady, but she just gets a lot of stuff thrown at her. So just keep her head above the water, and guide her through life. Help her feel your presence with her. And I'd also like to pray for myself. Yes, I don't know. I feel like I've been like a little bit on edge lately. It's just been a lot easier to get me angry, and I don't like it when I'm angry. So just keep me from not being angry, I guess. Yes. And that's basically it. So yeah, thanks God for existing and making us exist. So it was a controversial move, but I think it's gonna work out in the end, and that's what our hope is. So thank you and amen. Okay. What was I saying? Yes. So I'm gonna end the video now, but I like to start the Bible study with a worship song, and I like to end it with a worship song. But like I said, I can't play the worship songs in the same video because of very stupid copyright reasons. So I like to end the Bible studies with like more of like a loud, pump it up kind of worship song, something to get the adrenaline going, snap out of that meditative learning zone and just feel like you're filled with the spirit. It's something you can dance to, bop along to. So for those watching on YouTube, if you want to look at the link in the description. I'm sure you saw it for the quiet worship song. There's a loud worship song. Watch that video after this video ends, and be blessed by it. And that is all I can say about it. So thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next week. Okay, bye!